Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I got muted. Hi everybody. How is everyone doing? My name is Daphne, and I will be sharing my screen in a second. I'm just waiting for my colleague here to hop on, and let's see.
Hey, Daphne, can you hear me?
I can. All right, so let me just give me 1 second. Whoops. There we go. Just trying to switch my screens here. Let me. Sorry.
Sounds good. I'm not sure why my GoToMeeting is showing my name, your name actually for me. It's a little weird, but that's okay.
We're all here, so it counts. Well, hello everyone. My name is Daphne, and I got Jimmy here as my co-host today. He will be answering any questions on our forum, and so feel free to answer or ask any questions on the chat. Everyone will be muted, and we will have some open floor ones bring up some of the questions coming up. And so I will check in as I go through my presentation. So without further ado, I will start going through our agenda today. So today we'll be going through the overview of how the integration works, as well as how the mapping and what it looks like on QuickBooks side, and some important facts about the naming convention on the setups, and that will lead us to the limitations as to why we recommend the naming convention the way it is. Right. Whoops. Wrong way. Okay. So I will be sharing my screen with our demo system. Let's see here. Let's see, where did it go? Oh, I closed everything. Uh-oh. Bear with me. Sorry, guys. So those are the type of people that we need to make sure that we pull in there. When we do the second session now, again, keep in mind that the first session we're not going to be able to. All right, here we are. Content, so that's why we have 2 sessions. What we'll do at the tail end. Okay, so then I will start with a simple process as going through a job and sending an invoice. So here we create one, let's say, and the general process is just doing this, and here's your invoice. Okay, and then on the left side is where we map to a QuickBooks item, and click Save. And this export button pretty much will pop up as you approve the invoice, so I will explain a little further about my recommendation later. And the export. Okay, so how this works is our integration is built through an API language. So what API is the common language between the programs. So as you can see right now, we have exported, our typical data where there's a full amount and your company name and your invoice number. And as a result, coming into QuickBooks, we got our invoice name. Where did it go? Okay, so then here is our invoice number, your customer name, and all the other items within the invoice built out. So then, how do we create that invoice? Is we have grouping, and it works with the expense as well. So let's try that with an expense. We can map it to different accounts payable account, and we input our vendors. Okay, and Oops. Okay, and then we have some simple validation as well. So then just to show you what happens in the back end as we configure it, we can go into our QuickBooks setup. So far, is there any questions in terms of integration that people want me to highlight, Jimmy?
No questions thus far. I'll definitely let you know if something comes up.
Wonderful. So how that whole invoice push work under the hood is we have mapped some creation of the account receivables, account payables, and all these drop downs will show all your data within QuickBooks. How does that do it is we connected it through your regular, login of QuickBooks with an administrator rights account. And then once we have that, it kind of works like, when we sign up or register for accounts with our Facebook account or Google account, it kind of works that way. So once we have all that connected, we will always have this connection with the QuickBooks to pull this data through. So how we set that up in terms of services, as you saw in the invoice, this side on the left is our customer-facing items, and on the right side is where we kind of name it into QuickBooks, where it is relevant to your financial statements and or profit loss statement or customer statement. So in those terms, you may not have to go through as much details as you would in the client-facing item. Similarly, with expenses, you have all one side where you are billing your customer, and that goes into your income account or items. Note that it is income items, and within QuickBooks, you can push it and default which account you want to put it through. But each item will have versus on the other side of your expense, it is mapped directly to your expense account or cost of goods sold account. Okay. Next part is when we mentioned about like accounts payable. Sometimes you pay directly with your credit card, and so you can set that up. And once you push it through, yeah, of course, the people QuickBooks expert would know that your credit card statement must be like synced with your account, that you can match it and close it from there. Accounts payable, receivable. Sometimes you can manage multiple accounts receivables, and most common use is like if you receive different currencies, you can create them and manage it separately within QuickBooks. Okay, and so that's how the general mapping works. And then lastly, with the taxes, it may not be apparent. So on the tax groups with function point, you create tax and you map it and match it to the QuickBooks tax groups. Okay, and so how that works is function points will send the total amount and you match it to what the tax group you indicated in your integration. So this is your QuickBooks page. And then QuickBooks will recalculate it themselves. So once that happens, sometimes if you find the discrepancy in the two tax amount as a result, do check your setup and the rates on both function. Okay. And payment terms work similarly to taxes, how QuickBooks will take your mapped payment terms and do the calculation based on your terms set up in QuickBooks on the number of days. So what significant that will bring is in this invoice due date here, it is based on the terms mapped. So from here is 30 days from your invoice date. So lastly, payment methods, same thing, mapped. And if you collect payments from QuickBooks, manage that. This is why it is important from here. So as far as mapping goes, that's your basic high level one. Do we have any questions about that so far, Jimmy? Oh, Jimmy, I think you're on mute. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. No, not thus far.
All right. Great. So do forgive me because I'll get pretty passionate about QuickBooks pushing and stuff. I am a state, I like my data. So if I'm going a little too fast, I apologize at any time. If you need further assistance, please, contact us at support@functionpoint.com. We can definitely help you set up, and some may have specific scenarios where we wouldn't be able to cover all of them today. But yes, do reach out to us or your success manager. Okay, so some of the best practices I like to go through, as well as leading to your naming convention. So in the general tab of this page, you will see that, in the QuickBooks PO number format, we have this recommended area where it says use PO and reference number. That relates to, the PO within the external expense. That's what it is referring to. I will just add another tab here so we can easily reference back and forth the 2 pages. So the PO number is automatically assigned from function point. Reference number is, your record. So why we recommend using the PO number and reference number is because we want to avoid duplication within QuickBooks. If there is a duplication, there is a chance or pretty high likelihood that your old data will get overwritten. So by adding an other parameter, it kind of makes the data more unique and the number more unique. So when we bring into a bill, this is what will look like. Okay. And this is your PO number, and this is your reference number. So let's try to add one here. We got our AB. Okay, so AB. Make sure we put our number in. Okay, if we don't, I'll show you what happens. Okay, we just quickly enter. So I never recommend you deleting anything from the system unless you create an estimate. Okay. While we do that, you will see a little warning because we've selected that we want the reference number. So we can edit 07. Okay, save. Now we can export it again. As you can see, it is an immediate kind of insert. So now we are looking at our external expense here. We got our bill appear, and now this is our PO and reference number. So this is why we recommend that if I sent another bill with the same number, this invoice will get overwritten. Just like the PO number format, we also have the job name format. Within Function Point, we have job as under a project already. So with the option of having job number and name, there we can insert it as your sub customer, or what we call project in QuickBooks as well. Is a special setup in the back end if that is your preference. But by default, the number and name is being presented in the invoice message of statement. So how that looks is, let's see here. I want to highlight that for you. Okay. Okay, so at the bottom here, it will display for your reference. Okay. But do note with that, when we pair up the job name and the customer, we do have a character limit. If it goes longer, then it gets truncated, meaning it gets shortened along the way. It may or may not make sense to you, but do be more mindful about the character limit here. Okay, do we have any questions about the naming convention so far?
Not currently. I'm sure questions may come up after or in a short little while.
All right, great. Okay, so like for those that don't have the integration yet, I do want to point out that the customer name is very important to match between the two systems completely. So by that, I mean when I go into, let's say I searched and I created two separate companies from the data entry errors. And this happens all the time with, an individual with a legal name or versus some people just thought this is their name. So as you can see in my function point, there are two copies. When I was creating invoices or expenses, one can be under this name and the other can be under the first copy of the name. So as a result, QuickBooks will not know this that they are the same company. So at the end, we also have two records in here. Now, in QuickBooks, you can easily merge them. So the best practice when you have the integration or before you send any invoices, do make sure that your names do match. Let's say, how do we fix this? There is a little field at the bottom of your customer or company record called QuickBooks customer name and customer vendor name. So you can make this field to match exactly how QuickBooks is named. But if you can avoid this right from the start, it would be a lot easier. The reason I said this is because to delete or make someone inactive in company and you want to merge it in function points, you do have to match all your jobs as well. But if you need help, again, you can contact your success manager and we will help you out from there producing the best workflow. Secondly, when we do recognize that some business legal name has characters like apostrophes or ampersand, with the API language, it tends not to like those characters. So as a result, sometimes it behaves a little funny. And to avoid that, we just want to tell you to avoid all these characters at all times. So if that is the case, again, we can use these fields to show, send it as a different name. To put it in a better perspective, let's say if I did this. Okay. Unfortunately, that is a legal name, and that's what they want their bills to be displayed as, or something. So then, the API language actually just match it with a company name. You can rename the display name or the check name however you need it to be. It's just that between the transport of that communication, we are going by this name. So it seems like a puzzle. However, it is possible. So do reach out if you need our assistance. And finally, with the API, it is a one-way communication. This means function point is the talker and the QuickBooks is the listener. And somehow, like, QuickBooks doesn't talk back. So how that affects our system is that once we have our invoices in here, you manage your payments within QuickBooks. Okay. In function point, we will not get this information. So what we recommend as a best practice, like, we don't want your team to feel like they're not getting paid or everything's outstanding. As a result, you do have to go into each invoice and indicate that it is paid on a second kind of level of work. So we go edit detail. Okay, so let's go back to that original estimate you just pulled up. And then mark it as paid with your cash method or something. Let's go in and let's copy this. So it is separate. Okay. And some people may opt out of that step, but then just for internal communication and record keeping, it is good to have this paid. That way you can use it as a reporting mechanism or like metrics from our new BI report. Okay, then now as you go through invoices, and you will encounter where there's times that you want to modify an invoice. So how do we do that is we will always tell you never to delete an invoice in QuickBooks. And unfortunately, once you do that, you will have to start from scratch. The 2 records has been lost, and the only way to fix it is to delete it in function point as well and recreate the invoice. So the way to process an existing invoice is, let's say I'm going to make changes to this invoice. Okay, as we see, it has been exported already. Not a big deal. We can go ahead and edit. Okay, and let's say, okay, this person don't want this anymore. We delete it. Okay, and then we click save. And now see the status indicates that, the 2 copies is out of sync. And all we have to do is we export the update. Okay, and sometimes you will get this fail, and which is perfect. I can show you this. You can review the export error. Okay, and then along with the other invoices, you can see all in one page. It just tells you something is missing as a request. Perfect. Now we edit again. Double check that you have all your items mapped. That is the most common error. And then click save. And as well, you can even just click unpost and do a full sync again. So now the status is in post, re-export, and usually it resolves the issue.
And then what we want to do is, if you look in the breadcrumb and you can see where it says Oiko's Black 2019.
All right, that's embarrassing. That didn't work. All right, so let's go that.
Now if you click on the job financials,
okay,
it will fix the estimate total.
And then while I have you on that page,
I know what we got to do. Sorry, my bad. Go back to those 2 estimates.
We can go into find invoice. And with this export status, you may want to add it once you have your integration set up. You got export status checked. Leave it there. Save column. Okay. And then now I want to check all my error messages. Okay. We got sort that.
And then let's go back to 1042.
Okay. Well, it looks like the other one went through. Where you go? Or is this in a different invoice? That is a different invoice. Okay.
So top right, yeah.
There it is. Okay. Let's try this again.
Yeah. Okay. Now what we want to do, and I just want to, I know I'm kind of
all right.
Place, but let's go back to the breadcrumb. So
okay, so let's try this again.
Click on that job financials.
If not, then we'll have to try another one. But anyway, let's try this. 10. Let's change that to 10. It may not like empty fields. Okay.
In the sub menu there. Okay, let's pull up that 1040.
It worked before I started, but let's try a different invoice.
Revise and edit.
Okay.
Now let's delete. Yeah, that's fine. Let's delete the second and third pieces out of here. So what we're looking at here is what we want for asset creation.
Okay, now it's out of sync. Keeping my fingers crossed here. And now it's exported. Then it will appear on your most recent transactions again as an update. And then it automatically updates your invoice. So that's the correct way of doing it. Never delete it. So then oftentimes there are other errors within the system that you will find and come across, especially in the beginning when you first set it up, or even trying to import some old invoices. So what that error message looked like is earlier when we found that sorry, it was here. Earlier, we found that some business validation numbers. So what that means is sometimes all your not all your accounts has been mapped, and you can usually see that through when you go in here, related. Let's go into this one. I believe it was this one. Okay, and then usually on the left side here, even though we've mapped in the back, some old items may not have been. So then you can change this manually as you produce each invoice. Let's just say this is like a exception for one time. So that's why this drop down is available. Okay, and then once we have, like, let's try if we export it, we'll encounter one error like we saw earlier.
Perfect. And you don't need to assign any hours there, you just overrid it for the total. Okay.
And this is the number you will receive. Okay. So always first thing to check is your mapping.
Yeah.
And then another most common issue is the customer active account within QuickBooks. So sometimes you may have some historical data that you want to export again, and this person may have been marked as inactive in here. So double check that if that person is in, or this account is inactive, QuickBooks will not let us create new invoices for this customer. Okay, so those are the most common errors that we run into. If there are any other ones, do contact support when you can't figure out what is happening and you're still getting error. What we'll need from you when you contact support is we just need your invoice number and what kind of error description you are experiencing or running into, and support will be able to help you. Okay, and any questions so far?
Yes, so Daphne, there is a question where they're wondering if you take a look, if they are asking how to create an estimate with only one service code at the expense level, so that when they go and add that vendor invoice, there is an expense type and the COGS accounts are selected automatically. Is it possible? Do we have time to maybe go through that?
Yes, absolutely. So if you mean like we're just creating an expense from scratch and then with one line item, or is that just from an estimate, like at the estimate level when it's not a job yet?
Yeah, so I believe the question is if they create an expense item, say printing on the estimate level, how would that map to, can that be when they select to add a vendor expense to that printing item, can the COGS account be automatically populated?
I believe like the workflow would have to be reviewed. It's just because at the estimates, we can't create that. However, or maybe I'm just not understanding the question. My bad.
Yeah, I think so. What happens is if we go into a job in the job financials page with an external expense item, we should hopefully be able to see that.
Yeah.
So I think, Sika, for your question, there are 4 expense items on here, which we selected originally from the estimates. So we got photography, printing, meal, and credit. So if we go in and click on the add button to any of these line items, you'll be able to see, notice how you can now enter the vendor invoice, but then on the back end, the expense type is automatically selected and the COGS account is automatically generated for you.
Yes. Okay. That's
so
great.
That can be, I believe, hopefully that does answer your question. And this would apply for things such as media items as well. And those expense item mapping can be set up on the back end.
And that just brings a default. So just like the invoices, you can make some changes on if there is an exception that you're encountering. And it is a very flexible system. So do be careful when that happens. My biggest mistake is when I kind of type on the keyboard sometimes, and it might change your drop down selection. Okay. So the other one, another question.
Is it possible to go through that again with because she would like to see that, how we added that. I believe she would like to see how the expense was added.
Oh, from the beginning? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so So yeah, there's two ways of doing this. Just like Jimmy walked us through, when we're in jobs under our financials, when we get to the expense section, on the plus button, if you hover, it tells you that you can add the external expense directly from here, and that kind of auto-populates all the job and expense information. The other option, if you want to have create from scratch, let's say you have a bill in front of you that has multiple line items that is applicable to multiple jobs. So let's say I have food delivery again, and I have one for this job, and I have one for another job. Let's see. Okay. And you have, as a result, like going through this way, you do have to make some manual entry. So in here, so once I enter the expense type, it will auto-populate the QuickBooks account based on my mapping in the back end. Okay. And if I selected a different one, well, okay. Fortunately, this one. And let's say if I did supplies, that's my different expense account, just to just for demonstration purpose here. And here. So this way, you are entering multiple line items with the same bill. So reference number may be different from here, but let's say if I do the 0, and I paid with my credit card. Okay, save. And here we'll, let's see. No, that's not the one. Okay. Dashboard. That's weird. Normally it comes through right away. Oh, I didn't even export it yet. This is what happens when I mute everyone. Okay. Great. So here. And now, just like an invoice, it separates the two lines, and your customer name is on here. So I've gotten a question in the past where some markups are pre-set in QuickBooks to calculate the markup for you. But in this case, because Function Point does create the invoices from their end based on your expense calculation, the QuickBooks markup percentage no longer is going to work in this mechanism. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that answers your question. If not, like, we can take it offline and I'll walk you through. Okay.
There is another question from Holly that asks, so when they're in QuickBooks Online, are they not able to pull AR or AP info from Function Point?
AR
so they, and they believe, they understand that QuickBooks Online will reach out to the banks to get the updated info, but she just wants to make sure that she should not start in QuickBooks Online first.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Holly. Yes, so once you've gotten the integration, the initial part of the invoicing should come from Function Point. And then when you do want to manage your payments on AR and all that information collected, you would use QuickBooks in terms of the statements, just because we can't manage multiple payments per invoice. Same as accounts payable, we do, as part of the requirement for this syncing, you do have to connect your bank accounts and credit card as well. So that's the two separate components from Function Point and QuickBooks to manage your accounts payable. Okay.
And Daphne, can you, is it possible to explain just really quickly, because we're looking at the online version of the integration right now, to explain the difference between the two, desktop versus online integration?
Versus desktop. Okay, so the functionality-wise is it's very similar. The language may be a little bit different. So some buttons are different between the two systems. So we have this extra another application that you will have to download and perform when you do the synchronization between the two. So Versus Online is a lot quicker, and that desktop, we are not, like, the features isn't going to be expanded as well as QuickBooks or as quickly as we can. So the two main difference mainly is just the application in between. Okay. And anything else we got?
No. So once you
I believe that is all the questions I have currently. Yeah. If there are any additional questions that people would like to ask, well, is there anything else you would like to go through today, Daphne?
Oh, okay. So one last one is this one hasn't really came up to my attention, but as I did more demo, I do ask of people who will be the one that initiates the export of the invoices. So, sometimes there's only one person that accesses QuickBooks, right? So how does your team communicate with you whether the invoice is ready to be exported or not? So there are a number of ways within the system that we may not be using at the moment. And I recommend this approved invoice field where the default is unapproved, and when your project manager or your account executive have validated the invoice, and they would check this approved checkbox and then export. That just avoids the need of modifying the invoice going forward, just like I had demonstrated earlier today. So if this is something that you want to adopt, please connect with us and we can get you going. Okay, so if I were to export this, cancel. Let's find one that I haven't done yet. Okay, so how that approved invoice works is the system will not allow you to export it if, let's see, well, this won't work, but okay, so if I did this, okay, but yes, the invoice is not approved, therefore I cannot export it. So that's one of the ways that you can communicate internally without going back and forth with all the emails saying this one's ready, this one's not. And then the other method is just use job status or invoice status, or even quick notes within the invoice. And then anything that you can search within the find invoice parameter. Okay.
Now go in and click on
And
edit.
that's what that's my workflow recommendation for today.
Click on that sync estimated hours button.
And then, Jimmy, do you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to make sure the questions, a couple additional questions that came up in regards to syncing for the jobs. And correct me if I'm wrong, Daphne, but for job syncing, we currently do create the job for QuickBooks Desktop integration. However, currently we don't have that functionality yet for the QuickBooks Online integration. And in addition, for the application install that Daphne was mentioning previously, so that only where you need to install a separate application on your desktop, that only applies to our QuickBooks Desktop integration, so that Function Point and QuickBooks Desktop can communicate with each other. You don't need to install any additional applications onto your computer when we're syncing and integrating with QuickBooks Online.
For the job one, you mean like the projects aside when we list it under here, right?
Correct.
I believe we can't program it, but support can help you configure that. We can separate and make the job as a sub-customer / project, but it's not out of the box. We have to go in the back end and make some adjustments.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. Thank you.
I just learned that myself yesterday. So it's a new feature. So that is a direct demonstration of like how we can make some improvements with the online integration compared to desktop. Online is an immediate update. That's why we can do that much quicker.
Okay.
Finally, let's wrap up. I want to remind everyone that we do have a community forum on our help center. So if you go to your application and that little information icon, you will see a help center. We do update with our new releases and new any user documentations along with those, as well as we do have these webinars and from our past recordings. You're welcome to watch, and we are continuously updating the user documents. And if you have any comments or any questions within those, you can contact us directly and with at support functionpoint.com. So lastly, Jimmy, this is your area.
Yeah. So FP referral program. So I just want to remind everyone that thank you for your support ongoing with Function Point. Now I'm sure you guys work with many other agencies. So when you do, we do have a referral program in the scenario where if you do refer an agency to Function Point and they do start using Function Point, we will actually send out a $300 Amazon gift card to you, just as a way of thanking you for, your continued support. And yeah, it's also our way of saying thank you to you as well. So we'll send that info perhaps later on.
Great.
And in the future, we will have a web page for you guys to fill out that to make it easier. But definitely, I believe we do have additional question from Susan that asks if in regards to the configuration and the support around that.
Yes, Susan, I can contact you offline and we can arrange that for you. Susan Brown. Yes, I will do that. Okay, so thank you, everybody. And our next session will be on March 6th on alerts and permissions. And please feel free to register online just like you have for today. And we look forward to hearing from you if you have any more questions or any scenarios that you may find you need assistance with. Great. All right. And then the recording will be shared soon. Thank you.